Very good evening, fellow inmates. It's Tuesday evening. We're still locked down. This is Candid Conversations from Lockdown. How long will it last? Remains to be seen. I think we're all going a little bit stir crazy. We do hope that you have enjoyed the competitions. Remember now, it's all about voting on YouTube only. So there's been a lot of people who've been liking videos, but they're liking them on Facebook. No, no, no. I'm afraid that does not count. You need to go to the Kyalami Park Club YouTube channel and then like the videos. Well, your choice of video, you need to push that little thumbs up button. Those are the likes that count, and those are the likes that count only. None of the Facebook likes will count. Let's get it going stir crazy here. Anyway, that's what you need to do. And remember, there are two competitions, 5,000 Rand up for grabs to the winner of the Hobby Horse Derby competition, and then 2,000 Rand to the Kent Farrington Skipping Challenge. Vote for me. Thank you, 2,000 Rand for that one. So please go and do your bit. And voting will close this coming Sunday evening at midnight. So Sunday midnight is the deadline. Get your votes in, and don't forget to share, share, share. We do hope that you have enjoyed that initiative, courtesy of Equipage Division of Hollow. Let's get into our conversation this evening. Now, I have had a few requests about dressage. And obviously, I'm a jumper. Dressage, not really my thing, although I am into the flat work. But my knowledge about the riders is not so grand. So I've decided to try and rein in a little bit of help this evening. So we do have two ladies with us this evening on our conversations from lockdown. And we are talking to Karen Keller. She's our guest. And helping me out this evening is Elena Jankovic. Elena, how are you?
Good, and yourself, Aiden?
I'm fine, thank you. Karen, how are you?
No, very well, very well. Can't complain.
You're looking a little bit tired.
Yeah. Like I said to the room at the beginning of lockdown, we've only got 4 weeks, and this is what we've got to do. And it's been hectic. He wishes he wasn't in lockdown with me. He's become a cameraman, a plumber, a lumberjack, all sorts. He's exhausted. So yeah.
So are you riding a lot of horses and getting all those odd jobs done around the house that you have been putting on the back burner for all that time, and now it's time to do them, and now you're spent?
Yeah, well, I must say I've been pretty busy just catching up with maintenance, and it seems like most of the other riders are either cleaning their houses or cleaning their properties up. So nothing different here. I only have 2 horses to ride at the moment. I don't run a livery yard anymore. That sort of closed down a couple of years ago. And so it's just about maintaining a property that I'm never on. So has been good to spend time at home, do all the things that I've been meaning to do for years.
When you say a property that you're never on, have you moved out?
No, I live here, but I leave at 6 in the morning to go teach, and I get back home at 6 at night. So I'm not based to travel and teach. Yeah.
Okay. Well, like I said, when we introduced this evening's conversation, dressage, huge respect to you guys, but I'm more of a jumper. So I'm going to hand the reins, so to speak, over to Eleanor, because she's got the technical dressage brain, and she's going to take over the interview from here. I might chime in, I might chirp in from time to time, so I might pop up, but I'm essentially going to leave it over to you, Elle. So off you go. Enjoy. Have fun.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm sure you're very capable of doing these interviews yourself. I'm not going to be asking any dressage questions, Karen, don't worry, like you put me on the spot. I think the interviews that Aiden has been doing have been really fascinating, with everybody's history, where they've come from, how they started, how they got into riding, and I think I want to keep it the same. So I asked Aiden if we could just keep it very casual. So yes, let's start off, like, how did you get into horses?
All right. Well, I was born in England, and I think around about the age of 10, I went on holiday with my folks, went off to Wales and ended up pony trekking. Very clear memory for me. That's the first time I ever sat on a horse. And I fell in love with it from day one. And I told the owner of the pony trekking station that I would be back to work for him as soon as I was old enough. I think the pony's name was Ringo Starr. So I have very fond memories of that. That's where it all started. And then I have non-horsey parents. They don't know anything about horses. So it was quite a shock to them. Shortly after that, I started at a riding school, riding once a week in England. And shortly after that, my parents said, we're immigrating to South Africa. And all I knew about South Africa, there were lions, not much more. And I sort of said, look, are there horses in South Africa? And he said, yeah. So I said, okay, I'll come. I'll make the trip with you. I'll do this. So they promised when I got here that they would buy me a pony. And anyway, a year later, on my 12th birthday, I got my first pony. And as I say, very non-horsey parents. I'd been riding in Port Elizabeth at a riding school. And my dad said, oh, that's great. Now you've got your pony. I don't pay for lessons every week now. That's not part of the deal. So I think my grandparents bought me a bridle, and there was no money left for saddle or anything else. So it took me a year to get my saddle. So I rode my pony bareback for the first year, and that's how it all started. And lessons non-existent, so every Saturday I had to clean tack. And in return for cleaning 20 saddles every Saturday, I would get a free riding lesson.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's how it started. I had sort of, I think I was always goal orientated. So my first pony cost 80 rand in those days. And he was the laziest pony from the riding school. In fact, he was so lazy, he wasn't even good enough for the riding school. So we, as I say, non-horsey parents, we thought we saw a bargain. And so my goal on that pony was to get it to canter once around the arena without breaking. And when I achieved that, I said, look, this is enough. I can't do this anymore. And so we duly sold that pony, and I got my next one, and we sold that one, I think, for 150 rand. So I upgraded to my next pony, which was a sort of grey, flea-bitten Basotho pony. And again, knowing nothing about it, but this one could jump jumps. So this was going to be okay. So that was my next pony. And after that, I got a saddle. And the day I got my saddle, I cried and cried and cried because I couldn't ride anymore. I put the saddle on and I couldn't ride with the saddle. And so that was a little bit, my parents saying, we've saved all this money, we've bought you a saddle. And I think it was one of those stock saddles, with the two arms sticking out the back where you tie your...
Yes.
One of those. So that was my experience with my first saddle. And that pony, his name was Don Juan, I started to compete on. He was pretty useless. He didn't like to jump too much. I took him to a showing class, and we did our walk, trot, and cant around the outside, and the judges called in a front line and a back line. And I didn't know anything about this, but I was indignified because I got put straight to the back line and I didn't get a chance to ride my test. And I said, that's it, I don't want to show anymore. This showing is not for me. He used to stop at most jumps. I think I did a few 80-centimeter classes with him. That was my second pony, and I think I sold him for 350 rand. So each time I upgraded. From there, I got my first thoroughbred off the track at 14 years old. So we went to the track, and again, with my dad, not knowing anything about horses, off we went. We had a connection somewhere, and off we went to go and watch the morning workouts. And They said, this is the horse for sale. You know, so we watched him do his gallops. He threw the jockey off, and I said, I love it. I'll take it. So that was always my sort of attitude. The same with the pony tricking pony. Anything that was a little bit dodgy or a little bit tricky or needed rescuing, I was the one. So I got my racehorse home, and he proceeded to be quite a good horse. That was, yeah, it was quite exciting. And when you grow up in PE, there's not so many shows, so you have to do everything. So I did some dressage, I did some showing, I did show jumping, a bit of eventing, all on the same horse, and usually all at the same show. So you'd start at 8 o'clock in the morning, and it was a little bit like into schools, and you'd work your way through the day doing every discipline and take your horse home again. Anyway, he turned out to be quite a good horse. I started getting a lot more serious. Then my dad said he would like to take up riding. So we went to an auction and bought him a horse. And I got it home and started jumping it, and it turned out to be quite talented. Yeah, so he was a special kind of horse. What can I say? So he was on the auction for a reason, and we got him at a very good price for a reason. And about a year later, I'd gone up the grades with him very fast. He was an old horse, and he was eventually I bumped into his old owner who'd put him on the auction, and he was used for herding sheep. That was his job, because he was no good at anything else, and they tried to work with him, and he used to lie down. And so I didn't know, I was oblivious to all this, and I'd taken him off the auction. My dad had 2 rides, got chased by an ostrich, and that was the end of his riding career. So I got the horse. And he turned out, in those days, I think it was called JA. He went up to JA, so did my other horse. And so I was dead keen on the show jumping. That was my thing. Yeah, and so the owner said, but this horse is crazy. He lies down. And I know he was a little bit strange. And often if we used to have agricultural shows in those days, and we used to ride in the evening under floodlights. And he used to freeze in the arena. So he would just kind of go like he was mesmerized, or just couldn't move. And he'd then stick his head and suddenly do a fly leap through there, and off we'd go. And often the 30 seconds that you have to get through the start, it was touch and go whether I'd make it, and then he'd come out and win the class. So he was quite a special horse. And then I had an event horse called Kemp, also a bit of a rescue, strange horse, 17 two-hand Hackney cross, that everyone said was a danger to ride, and bolted, and was the most horrible horse. And well, I didn't think so at all. I loved him, and I evented him, and he went really well. And I know people saying to my parents, why do you let your child ride that horse? Do you not care for her, or whatever? And as I say, it was interesting times, and we learned everything the hard way, having very non-horsey parents who tried their best. We had some fun times, and we made lots of mistakes on the way. So I think I learned more from mistakes than perfect training. Yeah, so that was sort of how I started my career in PE. We did point-to-point racing. As I say, very interesting story, fun story. This horse that I got off the auction wouldn't go in a horse box. So I lived a good 2-hour trot from the PE riding club in Greenbushes. People probably know that. And we could never get this horse in a horse box. So I would get up in the morning of the show, and I would trot for 2 hours to the show, ride probably 2 or 3 JA classes, and then ride home again. But the interesting story is trying to get this horse to load. So as I say, I didn't have a coach. I didn't have any knowledge. I tried to do some book reading, but so we tried the lunge rein, the twitch, the starving, putting the horse in with a blindfold. And for months, we tried everything that anyone would tell us. We were prepared to try it. And eventually, my dad built like a loading bay for cattle when you put them into the trucks. And we'd put a pole in behind and roll it up and put the next pole in. And eventually, we got him in the box like that. And so, general rule of thumb is we'd get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to start trying to load the horse. If the horse didn't load by 7 o'clock, I'd get on and ride the horse to the show. So one morning at 4 o'clock, he just walked into the box. We got him into the box and we're sitting there going, now what? We've got 2 hours to kill. My dad said, no problem, let's go make some bacon and eggs and we'll have some breakfast, and we'll take the front rail of the horse box, the chest rail down, and we'll give him some food. And we're so happy with him. And we left the little man door open and gave him his food, and off we went. And we're sitting eating. I'll never forget, my dad stopped mid-bite. And I just saw the look of horror on his face. And this little horse of mine had climbed out the door for the humans. And it was like he was coming out in slow motion, like a worm out of a can. And I had to get on my horse and ride him to the show and ride my 2 classes and ride him home again. So we started again. So that was like the kind of fun experiences and traumas we had learning to ride. And as I say, he was quite something. Very fond of him. I learned a lot. And that was sort of my junior career. So I evented, I showed, I did equitation, and very grateful in those days. We had the BP plan. I was hooked on lessons. I love having riding lessons because talent wasn't my strong point, but dedication and passion was all there. So BP plan came along, and I was determined to win every equitation class I could possibly win. And then I get to have lessons with the great Philip Smith, David Stubbs, Charlotte Stubbs, Gonda. So I got some really good lessons in my junior career with these people that were paid by BP to travel all over the country and come and coach us.
So up until that point, you didn't really have any lessons, and then all of a sudden you got to ride with some really great people.
Yeah. And as I say, I was hooked on lessons. I loved my lessons a lot because they were precious, and I had to fight hard to get them. So yeah.
Sure. And were you at all intimidated, like the first time one of them stepped in the arena to give you a lesson, or were you like quite casual and you're like, yeah, I won, so yeah, give me my lesson, I earned it,
No, I was very much in awe of these people. Obviously, I knew about them. I'd heard about them. I found Charlotte Stubbs quite intimidating. I think she was the one I was most nervous of. Theo LaRosse came, and I saw like rider after rider coming out in tears. And I always remember he had beautifully polished boots. He was always immaculate, but he was a really old school, like army teacher. And he'd shout and scream and reduce everyone to tears. And I just loved it. I didn't mind that at all. I thought I'd just take it on the chin. But yeah, I was in awe of them. When Gonda came, I mean, wow. I didn't sleep probably for a week before she came. But they were all great. They were great coaches, and I learned so much from them.
Okay, and then so from there, then obviously going into from juniors to your adults, how did it, did you start running a riding school shortly after that, or how did you get into the riding school and, start it up and get going there?
Yeah, look, at school, I always wanted to be a vet. That was what I was keen on. And then I realized my maths was not that great. And in those days, I think they took 36 people a year, and it was all Afrikaans. Now, my Afrikaans, I passed on the lower grade with 27%, I think. So, yeah. So it was a little glitch. And I realized sort of just before my trick, I wasn't really going to be in the top 36 in the country to get to get chosen for Mr. Pruitt. So I sort of changed tack halfway through that. I used to ride with a guy called Andre Ferreira. I'm sure everyone knows Andre. So he also helped me, not giving me lessons. He wasn't a teacher as such, but I rode with him and I helped. I did all his donkey work and helped with his horses. And I remember once he broke his leg. So that was quite exciting for me because I got to ride his 3 horses. So
was Irish Magic there at the time, Karen?
oh, I rode Irish Magic. In fact, I found Irish Magic. Yes, I found Irish Magic and I took him to Andre and I said, Andre, I found this wonderful horse. I'm sure he's going to be a good horse. And he was little, 15'2", saddle across, chunky and hot. And I really liked him. And I sort of was teaching at that stage already while I was at school. As I say, I didn't come from a very wealthy family and we struggled for everything. So I started teaching quite young and I was helping, usually riding a lot of horses that no one else wanted to ride. And I was riding this horse for this lady and she said, oh, I've got to give him up, I'm pregnant, I'm going to sell him. So I took him one day to Andre. I said, Andre, I think I found a winner here. I really think I found this great horse. And he said, yeah, it's okay, a bit small. No, don't worry yourself with it. And 2 weeks later, he bought it. So, but that was, it was one of those fun things. So he broke his leg after that. So I thought that's comeuppance. But he was a great, so I rode his horses and I watched Andre a lot. So he never gave me lessons, but I watched him a lot. And I never once saw him schooling his horses. But when I rode them, they were beautiful. Really, really beautiful to ride. I rode Compass Line and Remus and Irish Magic for him. For that time, he had a broken leg. And yeah, that was quite an experience. They were beautifully schooled. But honestly, could I say I ever saw him school a horse? No.
Well, when you say how does that work though? That they're beautifully schooled, but he doesn't school them.
I think he just had a gift. He was really, really gifted, and I think he was very simple and very clear. Stop is stop, turn is turn, left, right, whatever, and just balance. But as I say, it was like a quick 10-minute warm up, before he started the exercises. The guy is gifted, was really gifted. And so I learned from him by just watching. And
at this stage, you'd had no formal dressage training. Dressage wasn't in the picture yet. I mean, you mentioned showing and equitation and eventing and show jumping, but you didn't mention dressage.
I did ride in dressage. So with my second pony and my Pony Club Manual 1, I realized that getting a horse on the bit was a big thing. That was my goal with my second pony, was to get this on the bit. Now you imagine a Basutu pony with an upside down neck, no throat lash at all, and quite a stubborn streak. So my mission for that year was to get this pony on the bit. But it developed over time that I always liked my horses to be pleasant to ride, a pleasure to ride. I didn't want to fight with them. I wanted a harmonious relationship with them. So all along, all this time, I was point-to-pointing or jumping or eventing. I always had that sense that my horse must work easily with me. So I read a lot and I like my horses to be good on the flat work. Yeah. So as I say, not formal jumping dressage lessons. My first dressage lesson was with Theo LaRosse on one of the BP clinics.
Is that where you learned your style of teaching? Because I've had a few lessons with you. Did you learn that military style of teaching from Theo and learn to scare your clients from Theo?
I always thought I was such a kind, friendly, encouraging coach.
And when you were talking about people coming out the arena crying, I thought, yeah, I've been there. That was, yeah.
That was only because you got hung in a tree.
Well done for making Aiden cry. That takes quite a bit, Aiden. That's the first. Oh my gosh. But do you think those people, who gave you the most influence, do you think, in your teaching over the years?
To be honest, I have had probably more brilliant coaches than you've had hot dinners. So it's hard to point one out.
Okay.
As I say, I lack talent, so I had to make up for it in education. You know, I learned from. I've been to
why do you say that you lack talent? Why would you? I mean, somebody who's achieved what you've achieved couldn't have achieved all of that without talent.
I had passion, and I educated myself. The natural gift, not so easy. Not, you know, I remember my sister starting to ride at the same time as me, and everyone was watching her and saying how wonderful she was, and I was like still busy trying to, you know, get my heels down and go up down. So it didn't come. I don't think it came that easily for me. But what I did have is a huge love for horses. I loved them with my whole being, and I had a passion for it. So I was insatiable in the amount of input. And as I say, I've had so many coaches, and I've learned from every one of them. I mean, the list goes on, you know, from all the BP instructors that I've mentioned. I had lessons with Leslie Taylor, Barry Taylor's dad. He was great. He was a great inspiration to me, but they were all good. They were all an inspiration to me. I admired every one of them. As I say,
Just
had Andre.
tell me how that BP, you mentioned that BP series. How did that work? You had to win at equitation to get onto these clinics, or it was just a sponsored and anybody who wanted to be on them got on them?
No, so if you came first, second, or third in the BP equitation plan that you rode in that Charlotte, you know, invented this style of equitation and judging the rider, then you got to go on a clinic for free with these people. So then the rest were paying clients, and I certainly wouldn't have had the money to pay for those top lessons.
Which means you were winning a lot.
I was trying my damnedest to win a lot, yeah. So that's how I got to them, and then I came. So yeah, after that, after I matriculated, Andre Ferreira's mother, Ma Ferreira, had become quite fond of me because obviously I lived at the stables, and she said she was, you know, well into her 70s at that stage, and she was struggling. And so between her and Andre, they gave me the stables to run when I finished matric. So that's how I got into that. So I got handed a yard of 30 horses when I was 18, and that was the next phase of my life.
Where was that?
In Port Elizabeth.
Okay.
Yeah, at Andre's yard, which is Lorraine area, quite close to the PE Riding Club. And somewhere between matric, and as I say, I was teaching and riding a lot from when I was 16, because I had to fund my own horse at that stage. My parents had some financial difficulties, and so I had to work already to keep my horses from them. And I think Ma Ferreira sort of took a shine to me, saw that I could work hard, and gave me the job, you know, handed over the stables. She retired. Yeah, I'd done a few riding school lessons at Rothman Place, which was quite interesting. I remember one of my first pupils ever was Lorian Castle. So now Lorian Dittman. I think she was my first pupil ever. And she had a little Welsh pony, one of these little white 12-hand jobbies. And this pony, and in those days we used to have a manege, and everything was, the poles were three, what was it, barrel height, so that's 3 feet 6 inches. Yeah, I'm not used to working in that. So this pony used to walk, trot, and canter around and do its thing, and as soon as Lorian wasn't paying attention, it would canter flat out under the rail and leave her hanging on the rail. And I don't know how people trusted me with their children to teach them. I mean, it's quite crazy. The same with Lorian and his sister who I was teaching. I think I was 16 and they were probably 6 and 8 years old. and their parents handed them over to me with no education, no skills. Anyway, and I remember going on an outride one day, and we're in the middle of the veldt, in the middle of nowhere, taking these. There's me, 16 years old, taking these kids for an outride on my naughty thoroughbred off the track, and it lashed out and it kicked Lorian's sister's leg clean in half. So there she was, and it was like a gunshot going off. And there I was, stuck with these two little kids in the veldt and these two white bones sticking out of her leg. And they still came back for lessons after that.
God.
I think it was like 20 odd years later, they knocked on. I was living in Kyalami here, and they sort of traced me somehow. This was before Facebook and all these wonderful things we have today. And they tracked me down and said, "Hey, we're the Castles. You taught our little daughter, and she's living up here in Joburg now. She's still mad about riding. Can you give us some more lessons, and can you teach her?" And I thought, my goodness, if you only knew.
And there she came limping in.
Yeah. And I think after that experience, she never gave up. Yeah. So
and and now look at Lorian overseas competing and doing really well. So
yeah.
You couldn't have been that bad, hey? Start off. Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, so it's some fun times. As I say, I did a bit of everything. And then, so running this yard, my first night was horrendous. So I didn't live on the property. I checked the horses and then I'd go off home. And the next morning I got to the yard and the horse had colicked in the night. It was a polo pony. And it was a bit shredded in the morning. I think eventually we put it down. But that was my first day at work. And this horse had bashed itself around the stable the whole night. Pretty awful in those days. I mean, there's nothing I could have done about it. It just was a bit of a rude awakening. And managing a yard with the grooms, they had no respect for me. That most of them were alcoholics, I think. So it was a little bit of a tough baptism of starting work. And I remember I had to get up early in the mornings, check the horses, and then I go and ride work at the race course. And then somehow I ended up waitressing at lunchtime. So I probably wasn't making enough money. I was on a mission to make money because all I wanted was my own property now. And so I'd run the livery yard all morning, quickly go and do a lunchtime shift at the local restaurant, check the horses, ride in the afternoons, and back to the restaurant in the evenings. And I remember often hiding under the counter and sleeping, waiting for the last guests to leave. But I was like exhausted. But I got it all going, and I started putting money away to, buy this property. And having worked at the racetrack, I was seeing a lot of horses, and then I started to buy and sell horses off the track. So that was another episode in my life, buying and selling horses. So I get them off the track, and I learned very quickly to have a good eye for soundness, conformation type, because the trainer would say, "This is coming off," and make me an offer. There was no vetting horses or things like that. And you just learned the hard way. If you bought a dud, you sat with it. You struggled. So you learned to look for limbs, conformation, movement, and you had to do that in 10, 15 minutes before the trainer would kick you out. And in those days, thoroughbreds were in high demand. There were no warm bloods as such. There were no sport horses. So we all rode thoroughbreds off the track.
And where was Andre during all this? I mean, why, when Mrs. Ferreira retired, what happened to Andre? Was he still there? Was he working, or?
Yeah, he did some other things. He was never the most dedicated. Like often these talented people were. He'd come and ride his horses when his mother kicked him out of bed and said, "You better get on with it." He was more keen on motorbikes and doing other things. So yeah, he never took an interest in running the yard as such.
And did you have a horse of your own then in lieu of payment, or as part of your payment, you still had your own horses there?
So I basically, they handed me the business to run. I had my junior horses still. It was a tough year because I lost 3 horses. When I turned 18, I lost 3 horses in the year. One had to be retired. The other one died of colic. As I say, in those days, there was no colic ops. And the other one broke its hip. So yeah, I ended up going from 3 JA horses to nothing. So that's when I started getting them off the track, producing them and selling them. I used to send them up to Vila Ross. A lot of my good ones she took, and that's how I got going to start again and buying some new horses.
And Karen, was the aspiration to event or show jump in those days, or was dressage already on the radar?
As I say, dressage was always in the background because it's basic training of a horse to make it rideable. So it was always part of what I did. And I was dedicated in that respect, that I knew it was important. But yeah, show jumping was what I wanted to do. That was my main focus. And as I say, growing up in PE, you do everything. It's part of life there because there's such few shows, you know. And so I did showing. As I say, I did everything, and I did ride in dressage, and I did school my thoroughbreds up. So they often would jump a JA class, go and do some elementary dressage, and a bit of showing, all at the same show. They just did everything.
So when, how, and why did the transition to then focus on the dressage, to give up the show jumping?
Okay, so that came quite a bit later. So I do remember, I think I won the Eastern Cape Dressage Champs once, but it was a very low level. It must have been elementary, or, you know. And so as I say, dressage was always going on. I didn't think of it as a separate thing from what I was doing every day. Then, yeah, as I say, I took serious strain. I probably suffered a little bit of burnout, if I was to be honest. I had a few bad incidences with grooms. A groom tried to attack me, and it was sort of the final straw. And I thought, no, I need to get to Joburg. I need to get where some more action is. I need to learn more. You know, the more I learned, the more I realized I need to learn more. So I came up to Joburg, and I worked at a Nanda club for Yvonne Bolton.
How old were you at that stage?
I was 21, 22. Yeah. As I say, I tried a little bit at selling horse food. I was pretty useless, so that didn't last too long. But that's where I got into the racing. So before I left PE, I did a lot of work riding, and I got to ride in the First Ladies race, which was quite fun, with Carol Millard and Clodagh Shaw and a few others. And those are the ones I can remember. But that was
who did you ride for? Who was the main trainer you rode for?
I rode for Stanley Creer.
Okay, I was going to say Stanley Creer. Yeah.
Yeah, I rode for, yeah, Softly Softly Yard. His yard was called Softly Softly. And yeah, very fond memories, and I really enjoyed that. I also rode for Rose Parker.
Was Alan running around as a young boy in those days?
Alan, his son. No, it was Brett, and it's not Alan Parker. Anyway, her son, the vet.
No, I mean Alan Creer.
Oh, I didn't meet any of them. So yeah, so that was an exciting time, and that was a lot of fun. And the other story I remember, just before I left P, I went to Cape Town for a big horse show with my A grade, and Nicky Lowe was there. So anyway, I was riding around. I'd just gone adults, that's right. So this was my first big adult show, and it was a big show in Cape Town. And I was jumping my first, whatever it must have been, B grade class, and on my thoroughbred, and some chap came up to me, and it was Nicky Lowe, and he said, "Excuse me, young lady, you're jumping the warm-up jump backwards." So, that's the kind of thing I do. The ground line rolled out, but my horse was very careful, very clever.
I mean, having said that, I interviewed Mickey Lowe, and he was a master tactician and liked to put his opposition off in the warm up and walk in the course. So you might have actually been jumping it the right way around. You never know.
Pretty sure I got it wrong, but anyway, he came up to me. He obviously watched my horse during the show, and on the third day of the show, he came up to me and said, "I would like to buy your horse." And I proceeded to burst into tears in front of him. My horse is never going to be for sale, and I think he offered me the princely sum of 25,000 rand in those days, which was
Sure.
a lot of money. So yeah, and I said, no way. No way. And I remember crying in front of him because I was really scared of him. But yeah, that was a little story aside. So yeah. Anyway,
So you didn't sell the horse?
No. Pity. That was my first mistake. It's been an ongoing mistake. I've never been good at selling horses. And as a
25,000 rand in those days would have been a lot of money.
It was a lot of money. It was a lot of money. It really, but I didn't, And ongoing from there, if I look back at my career and say something that I should have changed, as a professional rider, I should have sold a lot more horses. Just a wrong business move on my part, because if you're a professional rider, you can always make another one. And when you get a good offer, you should really sell, I think, as a professional. And that was a weakness in my thinking.
But hindsight's an accurate science, and when you're in that situation and you think, well, this is going to be the champion, it's always difficult to sell. Hindsight, when it doesn't become the champion, is when you go, I should have sold that one.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. No, absolutely right.
So you made the move to Joburg at 21, 22, and then?
Yeah. So I came up to the Big Smoke, and so the funny thing there is, PE girl, teaching at Ananda, and I remember one day, a lovely hot sunny day, so I took my top off and had my bikini top on and my shorts, and I'm in the arena sitting against the pole and teaching these kids. This is and Yvonne came storming down into the arena. How dare you dress like that to come and teach at Ananda? So I got a tongue lashing, and quite rightly so. As I say, PE, you're pretty casual down there, things laid back, So that's one of my first memories of getting on the wrong side of everyone.
Who was running Ananda at that stage?
It was Yvonne Bolton.
Yvonne Bolton came and gave you a tongue lash.
Oh yeah. As I say, much deserved. And I still remember being a bit of a wild coach. And we had to take the kids on outrides around the polo fields there. And
well, I want to know, when they gave you the job, did they, on your resume, did you tell them that you had broken some girl's leg once and pinned one up over a barrel another time? Was there full disclosure?
No, not at all. But I had a very good piece of paper because I'd got my SANF exam, the now Equasa exam level 5 or whatever it is. So yeah, I forgot about that. I did that early on. I needed some paperwork, so I did that really well. David Stubbs slipped a little bit through to me because he was judging my show jumping section, my show jumping lesson, and I think I swore. He said, look, it's not really cool to swear in a lesson when you're teaching, but I'll let that one go. Just remember for future, don't swear.
I'm surprised he didn't look around for Charlotte.
Yeah. So that was fun. Doing all those exams, and Abby, Tren, and Charlotte. We were petrified in those days. There I was 18, and these people are testing me. And cross-examining me. But David was always cool. He was very relaxed, friendly guy. Yeah.
So, and from then, how long were you at Country Base? And then did you have your own horses there? Were you still producing, buying and selling of the race horses? Was that an extra income stream, or was it just purely teaching?
I brought one horse up from PE, very good horse. I actually sold it. Natalie LaRosse took it on and took it up to A grade. No, not Natalie. I think it was Talita. Bought it from me at quite a handsome price, and a very good looking horse. And she took it up to A grade. So yeah, I didn't really have a horse then, no. And then a guy called Basil Laundo, who was stabling there, gave me a horse to ride, and I got a couple of rides. Yeah, so didn't own a horse then, and learned a lot very quickly. Had to shape up a bit quickly with my coaching. As I say, I remember going around taking the kids for an outride around all the polo fields, and I'd come back and I'm trotting off at a brisk pace, you know, doing my own thing, getting my horse nice and fit. And I came back with a few children missing because I was trotting so fast, they just whizzed right off the horse. Yeah, so yeah, teaching wasn't my thing in those days. I did it because it was a means to an end. I just wanted to ride. I just wanted to ride. Anyway, I stayed there for a while and decided that I think I should go overseas. I think I got married in the meantime. Yeah, I'd got married, bit of a non-event, but off I went, left my farm.
Well, the fact that you got married and then you said, well, I think I should go overseas now, and the husband didn't feature in this decision means it probably was a bit of a non-event.
Yeah, it was a bit of a non-event. So,
or was the decision to go overseas to escape from the husband?
Yeah, probably not really, but yeah, that was a good plan. But off I went, and you know, attention to detail wasn't my strong point in those days, and I looked at this Waterstock house and thought, this is it, and this is what I want to do. And so I wrote to him, gave him my CV, and very happily got accepted to pay lots and lots of money to be a groom and a trainer and have some lessons. So I'd saved up all this money from selling horses, and off I went overseas to Lars Cederholm, who was amazing. Really great guy, but he wasn't really into show jumping. He was an event trainer, and I hadn't worked that out until I got there. And I spent the first 6 weeks on the lunge.
Where was he based?
He was based near, just outside Oxford. Okay. And he was a Swedish guy, and he was training the British Olympic team at that stage, and Richard Walker was based there, and Claire Mason and a couple of other top riders. So yeah, I just remember lunge lesson after lunge lesson, and discovered the uses of Fisson baby paste for my butt because it was so sore. And I still use his training methods in lunging the rider, certainly, and some of his things. He was really a genius. He was really brilliant. And I just loved it and ended up eventing. And that's
when you say you love those training methods for lunging, what were some of those?
All sorts of things. I mean, he would make us ride with our stirrups like jockeys, and the kind of thing he would do is he'd make us do that so it increased, your center of gravity became very high. So any little untoward movement with your body was exaggerated to the power of 10, and you could fall off, or you would lose balance. So there was no grip. So the whole concept was about not gripping. So finding your balance without using your legs to hang on with them, and so on.
But you had ridden work for Stanley Cryer for years and years, so that came easy.
So it did give me a bit of an advantage. Yeah, the sitting trot without stirrups was the challenge. That was the challenge, because I thought I was too cool for school, you know, when I got there, and proceeded to realize that I really knew, you know. And I mean, he wouldn't even let me pass go. you get there and there's a panel there and you have an assessment lesson, and he goes, that one can do this one, that one, lunge lessons for the next 6 weeks, come back in 6 weeks. So he was a very talented trainer. He went on to teach the Olympic American event riders and so on. So, and that's where I met Yogi Breisner, who now also became, I think, the coach of the British team, and became very involved in racing and fitness of horses. And his daughter Tina Cederholm became quite a good author of horse books. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it, but I was married, and I kept getting these phone calls that it was time to come home, much to my dismay. But I did realize also that making a career for myself there would be quite tough. It would not be easy for me to get the good rides. He did offer me a job as his coach, and that was very hard. I really regret turning that down. And actually, Yogi Breisner got the job and made a huge success of it. So yeah, that was my stint in England, and how I got into eventing. So of course,
how long were you based there?
I was there for 4 months, 4 or 5 months. Yeah. And as I say, hard taskmaster, check everything, double check everything. You would ride all day and be the groom. You know, if the horses got back from the show at 10 o'clock at night, you would go and you would groom them, and you would check for cuts, and you know, you couldn't just put them in the stable and leave them. We worked really, really hard. And one of the things we did, our passing out parade, or whatever you want to call it, was we had an indoor school, and we all had to ride bareback. So what he would do would have a couple of lunging people in the middle of the arena, and you'd have a horse with no saddle and bridle. And you'd get on the horse, and there was a combination down one side and an upright on the other side, and they'd free lunge you. So we'd all sitting there, nips at the door, you know, waiting for our turn, and putting sand on our bums and mud to like anything to try and stick on.
Talk nonsense. You had that year where you had a pony without a saddle. This was all preparation for this moment. It's like second nature for you.
I didn't feel like it. You know, when you're free lunging horses, how they're spinning around and they get to the corner and they spin in the opposite direction. Yeah, I did pass that. But the funny thing about that is when I started eventing after that, after the lunge lessons and this, they couldn't get you off. It was like you were tucked into their skin. You just became one with the horse. And that was his whole thing. And I mean, obviously why he produced such top event riders was the system of his. Really fantastic. Tough but good. Yeah. And then I came back determined to be the SA champion event rider. And that's where, again, the dressage started to kick in. I was always in the lead after the dressage because I took care with that, whereas most event riders said, you know, forget the dressage, let's just get through with it, we'll catch them in the country. You know, those were the days. So that's where I started really learning how to school a horse.
Did you, when you came back from England, was your job still at base? Did you go back to base, or did you move on to a place of your own? Or
yeah, so I ended up, when I came back, you know, you must never ask an old person for a short interview, because we have lots of things.
I don't know who told you this was going to be short. I mean, that would be a first in these interviews.
No, I heard you on that other webinar where you said to Anne-Marie, said your interviews are too long. And I went,
hers was an hour and a half. So yeah. Carry on. Don't worry about time. People can always just scroll through the parts they don't want to watch.
Yeah, I came back with this passion to event, and I met Rick and Cara Manette, and they started giving me odd jobs and odd horses to ride, you know, because they had a big yard. In fact, the yard where the Oppenheimers are now, that was their yard, Rick and Cara Manette. And they ran
that's where I'm talking to you from.
Oh, okay, yeah. So right there. So that's where I came back to, and they were great. They were great fun and very social yard. Not quite what I was used to in that respect, but they had a lot of amateur, you know, weekend warriors that wanted to event, and Cara Manette was busy winning everything, and they were really a team. And so I sort of got involved there. Nothing official. I didn't get a job. It was just sort of freelance work, and had great fun. And then moved into a cottage at Delia Gardner, her daughter ran Sun Valley Stables, which was quite close by. So I needed somewhere to live with my still husband at that stage. And so I phoned around and spoke to this lady called Delia Gardner, who was very friendly, and I think she kept me on the phone for about an hour on the first day, which was quite something because I never used to say too much. Speaking wasn't my strong point. So I went to see to meet Delia and see the cottage and everything, and I had a horse at that stage. But one of the ladies from Rick and Karen couldn't ride. It was unmanageable and difficult, and she gave it to me, called Bold Buccaneer. And so I went to Delia. She was a lovely lady, took a shine to her. We talked about ponies and horses and everything. And she always tells the story afterwards. I said, and she was very proud because she just built 6 new stables, brand new stables, and she was proud that she got the ventilation and the height, and that she'd done a lot of research on her beautiful stables. So we went to the stables, and I looked at the stables, and I said, I love your stables. They're really, really beautiful. I'll take the cottage. And we became very close friends after that. We knew, you know, we've had a long, and in fact, I adopted her as my mother. Yeah, she already had 4 children, but she got another one. So that's how I started at Sun Valley. And they sort of, yeah, so I worked for them for a while, and I started freelancing, and they really gave me a leg up. They really helped me get going with teaching, and I taught in their riding school, and then started freelance teaching. Yeah.
Are those the same stables that are still at Sun Valley today?
No, it was a next door property. They eventually, Lee got married, Lee Lippert, and she sold the stables to Kirsty Lewis. So she sold the business, but it was a next door property. It was quite close, sort of in the same road.
So you left Burren Junction, you went to Sun Valley, and how long were you there for? And what horses did you have? And were you still eventing? Was it still eventing that was the main thing?
Eventing was the thing. And then I was quite a few years there. We had the horse flu, I remember, while I was there. So everything stopped. The riding world had to sort of came to a standstill. All the horses were dying of horse flu. We hadn't had horse flu in the country. So all movement of horses, all shows, everything was cancelled, and I ended up drawing on my waitressing skills. Funny how life, you know, helps you. So I ended up waitressing and looking after 6 snotty horses, and yeah, and getting involved. And I think through Lee and Delia, I met really good people. I met Claire Webb, and I actually ended up coaching her children a little bit, and Sharon Rueder, which was in those days Sharon Welsh. She was always a dressage judge, and very experienced horsewoman. So I got involved and started meeting those people, and yeah, stayed there for quite a long time.
And in the eventing, how were you going? Were you campaigning at top level eventing? Some of your good results, some of your horses?
Yeah, I had some good results. I sort of didn't quite make it to the team, which was obviously my plan. I was doing well in open, but hadn't been going for long enough, I think. Yeah, I was riding a few open horses. I won the mini champs about 3 or 4 times. Was often placed. I got famous for going the wrong way or missing out a jump. Was quite a thing with me, especially when I was in the lead. But yeah, generally always in the lead after the dressage and clear in the country a few time faults. That's my sort of style. But loved it. My first SA champs, I remember falling off 4 times. I'd taken a horse that wasn't ready. It was called Explosive, quite an apt name. Moira O'Hare's horse, she sent it up from PE and said, come, give it a go at SA champs. And you know, those days things were a bit different with grading and stuff. So I had to go. Clearly was not ready. The horse was not ready. I was not ready. And as I say, fell off, got back on, fell off, got back on, concussed, but you just get up and carry on. And that's how eventing was. I had to carry weights. We still did roads and tracks.
The rules have changed a bit now. You can't jump back on if you fall off, can you?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
No, it was totally wild, crazy.
Yeah.
And
Did you jump back on behind a bush? Did people see you fall off? Was it the same rules there?
No, but you just got up and I just got up and went on. But I was clearly very concussed. Don't know how I got round.
Well, that's probably why you lost your course.
Yes.
And
that was a kind of thing, you know, that was happening.
And who were your contemporaries? Was Graham Wynne dominating the scene?
Graham was amazing. Yeah, Graham, Cora Manette, Rick Manette, Douglas Walsh.
Gail was there.
Gail was there. Gail was there. Always remember, we always used to tease her because she show jumped across country. But she was good. But yeah, yeah, that was the crowd.
And at what stage now, or why did you stop the eventing? When and why and how?
Okay, so I got pregnant, basically. Yeah. So I remarried and thought I did absolutely the right thing because I married a man who had 2 sons, and there was the understanding that no children. And that wasn't part of the game plan. He was quite a bit older than me, and so that was the plan. And 3 years into my marriage, I had an oopsie, and a very, very good oopsie, in fact, because I had Ashley and motherhood. Yeah, so I evented until I was 7 or 8 months pregnant, and yeah,
and you knew you were pregnant, right? And you did know you were pregnant.
Well, I was hoping. It just needed to get out of me. I didn't need this in my life. This was not in my game plan. And whatever, she must be pretty tough because, you know, she survived. And my poor mother was on standby to adopt the child. And yeah, I remember going to lessons at that stage with Dominique, and he refused. At one stage, he just said, you can't do this anymore, Karen. You're just too big. And I had a very good horse called Allegro at that stage. She went on to jump the Derby with Patrick Brown. And she was a real great show jumper, and I was really enjoying her, but she was very feisty, and realized that probably
did
not.
Did she start off as are you saying she started off as an event horse?
Oh yeah, she started with me as an event horse, but she wasn't any good at it because she jumped too big. She jumped too big and too clean, and she wasn't. So I show jumped her. She was really amazing, but when I realized about this pregnancy is not going to go away, she wasn't really the right kind of horse, and I was a bit broke, so ended up selling her to Patrick. And that's when I bought.
She was an incredible little horse.
No, she was incredible, very well bred. I think a horse called Darius was the father, and I know David Stubbs really rated the breeding, and Greg Cleverden owned the mother. Yeah, she was great. A Hakahana horse, but out of a Namibian warm blood mare that David really rated. So yeah, so I sold her and carried on riding and jumping, but just not her. And in the meantime, then while I was pregnant, I bought Westwood home because I'd watched some dressage when the serious dressage bug, but I was at Ranch Show and I was watching people like Helen Ross and Natalie Hobday riding, and I'd been having some lessons with Natalie Hobday on my event horses to keep my dressage good. And I saw these horses skipping across the arena doing tempo changes, and I thought, oh, that looks like something I'd enjoy doing. So I spoke to Natalie and I said, look, this little horse has come up for sale, and I don't know how I heard about it. And she said, yeah, he's a really good old horse, and he will teach you. You'll never win anything on him, but he'll teach you lots. So I bought him, and that's who I rode really. Before I was pregnant, I started competing him, and I mean, I wasn't even getting placed in elementary. It was so bad because now I was doing pure dressage and not eventing dressage. And I remember everyone saying, "Oh, she rides really fast." You know, there was no collection involved, so I was like on a mission, and I'd go really fast around the dressage arena and not get very good marks. So I carried on having lessons with Natalie Hobday, and I rode him right up until the day my child was born, in fact. And then 6 weeks later, I won SA Champs on him. And up until that, I think he'd won every major competition there was to win in the country. And yeah, I was giving people like Vicky Mostert and all the imported horses a run for their money.
In the big stuff, in the big classes.
In the big classes in those days, it was Pre-St. George.
Yeah.
I eventually went on to do Inter 1 and Inter 2 with him, not very well. He was quite old and tired by then. But every major championships, I think, in the country, he won. Yeah.
And Karen, were you pregnant with Katie when you rode Westwood?
Yeah, I rode. So I was with Ashley, and then I won SA Champs, and then carried on riding like straight away afterwards. Carried on, and I was going to make my comeback with Katie. Yes, that was interesting. So I was about to go and defend my title. I think it was 2 years later or 1 year later, whatever, because I had them quite close together. You know, after having had Ashley, I realized that I just love kids, passionate about kids, and wanted another one. So, in fact, I wanted a couple more than that. But my husband said, hey, whoa, this was not on the game plan. And
yeah, that's a bit of a 180.
Yeah, that was a 180. That's it. So anyway, I was about to go to SA Champs in Durban, and Katie got ill. She was 6 weeks old. Delia was on standby. Delia was amazing. She was everything. She had a mobile home, and she used to move me and the kids and everyone. And I mean, I remember in eventing days, I had like one on the back and one on the front, and I'd walk the cross-country course, and I'd have a playpen and a nanny but that's why I stopped the eventing, because it was too exhausting. Because in those days, eventing was 3 days. And we'd start on the Friday evening, walking the course and doing the briefing, and then the cross country was on the Saturday, and the show jumping was on the Sunday. Now I managed with one child, but 2 children was beyond me. I couldn't cope with the logistics of this lot. So that was when my eventing came to an end. And I did have a fall at 7 months with Katie. Yeah. So, but anyway, that's
She's fine. For viewers watching, Katie's fine. You know, Katie's grown up to be a lovely young lady, top rider herself. She's fine.
So yeah, so that's the kind of thing. So anyway, I got into the dressage, and I was going down to Durban to go and defend my title. Or I really, Westwood Ho was on form. Wasn't able to overtrain him, which was a good thing. And I really thought I could do it again. And Katie got very ill, and she nearly died. So I spent the next couple of weeks in hospital with her on a ventilator. She got pneumonia and her heart stopped and all sorts of things. So that was the end of my attempting to defend that title. Yeah, so that's where my sort of dressage really came in. It all started with a little brave horse called Westwood Ho.
Was he a thoroughbred?
No, so a very interesting story. He was a polo pony, cross thoroughbred. And I'm trying to remember, quite a famous thoroughbred line that they often use for jumping. They were quite hot. It escapes me right now. Anyway, he was born in Zimbabwe.
Probably Lord or something.
And to a family, and then he was sold to someone who rode with Helen LaRosse. And they did some showing, and Theo picked up on him. He rode him in the ribbon part of the showing and said that he got 10 out of 10 for his ride. And so that's how he started his dressage career. He actually came down from Zimbabwe on a train. Yeah. So he'd had, before me, he'd had Helen LaRosse competing him and Natalie Hobday competing him.
So after him, you're now on the search for another dressage horse, another top dressage horse.
Yeah, then I realized that dressage with two young children was practically probably the way to go. You get your riding time, you go, it's not dangerous, you know. By the time Katie was born, I sort of realized these things are really important, you know, and that you want to look after them, and you can't, you know, look after a baby with one arm in a sling because you've fallen off your event horse. So that's when I sort of finally matured, quite late in life. I matured and decided, okay, I'll go with the dressage. Bought 3 young horses, all 1, 2 years old, and raised them and backed them and started to produce them as dressage horses. Had some really talented horses then. Winter General, who was by Winter Star, was a super international horse, really, really good. He ended up getting a very bad injury in the paddock and chipping his pedal bone just when he was about to peak. And then I had a horse called Angus Og that I got, and then people started giving me horses to ride. A lot of the ladies who were a bit nervous to back and break horses, and they wanted to do dressage, but yeah, I didn't really want to ride these young warblades. So I got a lot of nice young horses to produce.
And at this stage, you had moved across to Kyalami. You were at Keller when after your second marriage.
Yes. So we moved. There was a period where I went to live in Mauritius. So I moved with my second husband to Mauritius. He was a pilot, and had to give up the horses. But yeah, we came back and we settled in Johannesburg again. And I picked up from there. That's when I started with the 3 young horses, you know, like yearlings off the farm, and waited for them to grow up.
And some of your big results, I mean, they obviously became very good horses. Some of your big results, because training off of that property, that's probably where you had your most success. So take us through some of your accomplishments in the big time.
I don't know. I can't remember them really much. That wasn't a big thing. I remember always being in the team. I think for about 12 years I was in the team on various horses, numerous horses, and I got my Protea colours I couldn't ride a lot internationally. There was quite a few opportunities for me to go and ride overseas, but you'd have to pay your own way. And I had 2 young children, and I couldn't. I got offered to go to Australia, I think, and ride in this like World Cup thing with the third world countries, and Russia, I think, was another one. And I actually couldn't take up the offers. And eventually, that Tri-Nations came to South Africa, so I got chosen for the team for that. And so that's why I got my Protea colors. But having had the children has taught me that I could get as much thrill out of helping other people win as winning myself. And that was a big turning point in my coaching and my teaching. That's when I became really, really passionate. In other words, it wasn't just a job I had to do to keep my horses. It was a passion. And knowing the struggles I had learning things and getting things right, I think I understood people that didn't find it easy. And it wasn't, I found ways to explain, and I'd had so much mileage of so many different horses. And that's when I realized, during those times when I was having children and couldn't compete and couldn't ride as much as I wanted to, that there was a real joy in teaching someone else. And that was a huge change in my life. And I loved it. And I love watching people have a success and win and do well, or aha moments, seeing people grow in confidence, changing their lives. But you could do that with a simple thing of teaching them how to ride a horse and get a feel of how beautiful riding can feel, and how harmonious, and what it is to have an animal that you dance with like that, that gives so much of itself to you. That's when I really started and wanted to learn how to teach really well. That's, so quite late. And then, proceed. I mean, I remember when you're being in the team in Natal, one of the years I was in the team, and in those days, we're still the Transvaal when I started being in the team. But anyway, I was Gauteng, and we pack up a whole lot of, and the kids came everywhere with me. So, the kids came, everything, and the kitchen sink, and off we go to Natal. And I had, I think, 4 of the riders in the team. 3 of the riders in reserve were my pupils in the adult team, and I was the other member. So my pupils were starting to really, really do well. I had a lot of success, a lot of successful pupils that have gone on to do really, really great things.
Who continued training you? You mentioned Dominique, you mentioned Natalie. Were they, because it's obviously important, you were still riding this whole time. You didn't give up the riding just to coach. That was your day was riding and training. So who was helping you?
So who was helping me? So funnily enough, when my kids were still very young, so Natalie helped me basically. And then I did the dreaded thing of having 2 instructors at once, and I had Natalie and Helen teaching me, which in those days, like, it was a big no-no, but I just felt that I had a couple of horses, and some worked with this and some worked with that, and they were both great coaches, and for different reasons. And then I got a phone call from Marianne Conlon, and she said, I've just taken over the running of the Lipizzaner Center, and I need some riders. And would you come and have an interview, come and see us? Can I persuade you? How can I persuade you to come join us? I went, but you know what? She was a good sales lady, and she convinced me that I needed to be there. And another great friendship was formed. She is an amazing person. And we worked really, really well as a team together. So I spent 13 years at the Lipizzaners, in between competing, and I eventually competed on the Lipizzaners as well, quite successfully. And formed a very, and had lots of exciting times going all over the countryside, doing performances. I was the solo rider there for many years. And I did everything from the side saddle to the long reining to the helping with the capriole and the work in hand, and you name it, I put my hand up, even the lady sitting sideways on the back of the horse. And the only thing I didn't do was drive the carriage, because I think shortly after I got there, there were some problems with the carriage and we didn't have the carriage anymore. But we formed a great team, I must admit. She was a person, attention to detail. I was the doer and she was the brains, and it worked really well. I mean, for example, how she put up with me, I don't know, because obviously every Sunday my kids would come and then I'd go and compete in the show and ride in the performance, then go back and compete in the show on the next horse, and then change the nappies and feed my kids, and then, you know, and so on. And that's how it went. And because she was such a detailed person, she used to make lists for me and say, Karen, we're having a special performance this Saturday to open the race course at Turf and Team, to open some race, and these are the requirements. You have to do the quadrille and the side saddle, and these are the outfits that you must take, and everything was packed for me. Everything was done. The choreography was done, and I'd literally arrive at the venue, get on the horse, and do the performance and go home again. So that's how we worked as such a good team. She was attention to detail, methodical, and got me at the right place at the right time. And I remember, as I say, always cutting it fine. I always think I can get so much done in a day. And, you know, my hours consist of 75 minutes, not 60. And so I was often late for the performance. Now, the performance has to go on, and it does have a start time, and that can't change for anyone. So Elaine was the announcer at that stage, and I'd get these phone calls, you know, Karen, are you on your way? You need to get in there now. The performance is about to start. And eventually, Marianne and myself had a code, so we'd go, Elaine, long speech, or Elaine, you can do the short speech. And there was a long speech and a short speech. And the long speech was when Karen was running late. And I'd arrive there in a cloud of dust. One person would put my clothes on, the other one would throw me on the horse, and I'd go in there and I'd ride the performance. And some interesting times, a lot of fun, a lot of laughs, a lot of tears. And yeah, we were great. And it was our first time working in a team, really. Yeah. And it was a whole new experience for me. Working
you were like the Rihanna of the equestrian world, just always late for your performances. Why do you say it was a hard sell to get you in there in the beginning? Just because it was time away from your business and maybe your kids, or were the Lipizzanas in a different phase? Were the performances lacking? Why do you say it was a hard sell?
Well, it's certainly nothing I wanted to do. The pay wasn't very good. And I went there to see the horses, and to be honest, I thought they were really ugly. I mean, they had these great big heads, and they looked tiny. You know, I'm a little girl, so I always had to have a big horse. You know, the ego was important. And there was these little Roman-nosed, little funny-moving horses, and I didn't really get it. But anyway, she convinced me to have a go, so I chose the prettiest one I could find, which was Merlin, who became really special. And one of the loves of my life, not from a riding point of view, but from a character point of view. And he was a beautiful horse. He was really special in my life. And eventually I used to be able to bring him home for Christmas. And he used to live in my garden for the Christmas break. I was so fond of him. And that's where I got lessons with Andreas Hausberger. From the Spanish riding school, who's now the chief rider of the Spanish riding school, and a really hard taskmaster. Really, I thought Lars Cederholm was tough. This guy was really, really tough. And he did reduce me to tears. Probably the only instructor that has. But I learned a lot. And I learned to be a perfectionist, and I learned attention to detail and discipline, really. Yeah.
When you say reduce you to tears, are you talking about through pain or frustration that you weren't making the grade, or disappointing, or?
But frustration. I mean, when I say tough, I mean, I remember piaffing Merlin one day, and we were doing piaff and massage, and it was quite new to me, and I didn't really know that much about it. And he started shouting at me and screaming at me, and he said, "Karen, you have no feeling. You just have no feeling. Get off." And get off the horse. And he took the young rider who was actually not even allowed to ride in the performances, and he put them on my horse, and he made me watch. And that nearly broke me. Yeah. And that was the kind of discipline, or the kind of method in those days of getting someone to be better. You had to fight harder to get it. He was terrifying.
But was he right, or was he just a bastard?
No, he was. The problem was he was right, and he knew what he was doing. It's just the old military kind of system. And I mean, as they said at the one Lippy ball, he took the Lipizzaner tea party, ladies' tea party, and turned it into a military operation. But he had a point to prove. I think he was being groomed to be chief rider, and they needed to see his ability to change systems and do things. And so I admire him. I took it. I took it because I know he expected me to be better. He was not as satisfied with me not giving 110%. And if it wasn't good enough, there was consequences.
And did it make you better?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, well then he's not a bastard.
No, he wasn't a bastard. I really, really cherished. I used to. He'd come for 3 weeks every year in his leave time. He would come here, and he would. Poor Marianne. I mean, how she didn't have a nervous breakdown, because I think I had it hard. She was managing the center, so it was not only. It is how the announcing was done, how the arena looked, how the decorations were. She had to do the work in hand. She had to do, and manage all us riders, and we'd have a meeting every week. And it was really hard on her, because, he would say things to like, the fish rots from the head down. You are the head, you're responsible for this lot of lady riders, And he did. He turned us around. And those he didn't break, he turned around into good riders, and made us really ride well.
So he broke a few.
He did break a few on the way. Yeah, there was no room for error. He broke a few on the way, but it was like really fun. I mean, when I got obviously very friendly with Marianne, we became really close, and she is a fantastic person. But she would phone me and say, like, the eagle has landed, and we knew we were in for 3 weeks of hell. And we'd phone each other at night to try and, just keep the morale up. And I'd make my goal that he was not to shout at me for 3 weeks. And I remember the one time I got to 20 days without him saying terrible things about me and shouting at me and telling me I'd done things wrong. And on the last day before he left, he was catching the flight that afternoon. I'd made a mistake, and he just nailed me for it. My battery's about to run out. Anyway, and I had to wait another whole year for him to come back and approve of what I'd done, and that whole year I just worked on that, on whatever it was, but that was on the very last day. Things like that, yeah.
Did you ever shout back?
Never.
Sometimes that's the best.
Never tried that. I've never shouted at my instructors. No.
Don't you dare, Aidan.
Yeah, so that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah. And how much time do we have with your battery?
It just told me, I think I've got 10% left or 15% left.
So very quickly, Karen, Katie now, how proud of you are you of her that she has achieved what she's achieved? Because she's been SA champ for eventing.
She's been SA champ 4 times.
Whoa.
She is totally gifted. She's amazingly talented. She has feel. She has empathy. Yeah. So she started riding. I gave her lunge lessons when she was still in nappies. And I was going like, tuck your tummy in and sit up. I have it on an old VHS tape. And she used to ride Westwood Ho. And yeah, so she started very early in her riding career, probably 3 years old. And I found a very old 20 to 30-year-old pony for her as her first pony. And I was always very busy, very busy mom. So I had a paddock, which was probably 12 by 12 meters, maybe 15 by 15. And I put her in there on a pony and say, you know, call me when you've had enough. And I'd go off and ride. And often she would be following me in the arena round on her hobby horse, you know, copying what I did. So she learned through osmosis. But I never forget, I was watching her one day. So I realized what she did. She'd back her pony into the corner of the paddock. All right. So this pony was, you know, had one foot in the grave. And she would stand there, hold the reins tight, and whip and kick it like this until the revs were up enough, and then give the reins and canter to the other side of the paddock. And then she'd come back, stand it in the corner, get the revs up, and then turn it and canter off again. So that's how she learned to ride.
Amazing. Yeah. And where is she based now?
She's in Natal.
Okay.
Yeah, she's in
but
Natal.
Yeah, I think, Karen, if you can also tell Aiden that she's also helped a couple of us riders mentally.
Yes, she's into
somebody can
mental
actually help
coaching.
us. Yes.
Yeah. She's done a whole, she's going to be one of those perpetual studiers that's forever studying some new thing. But one of her big things was mental coaching for sports people. And right from when I saw her win her first children's SA champs on a pony that normally got like 3 poles down in the show jumping, was brilliant in the country, and she understood how to ride a dressage test. So the show jumping was their weak phase, and she didn't have a pole in hand. And I watch her, under pressure, she goes super cool. And it's like she gets in the zone. And she has an ability to do that under pressure in her riding. And so she went through a difficult stage in her life where things got to her a little bit. She's wonderful with animals, but had a problem, a shyness with people. So at school and so on, she always suffered from a low self-esteem, and she had to really work on that. And I think this is why she chose that field to work in. Horse riding came naturally. She's gifted. Accounting comes naturally. Numbers, things that are black and white, come very easily to her. People are difficult for her. Making polite conversation would be very difficult for her. You know. And
I know the feeling.
Yeah. So that is her, and yeah, she's starting again. She's studied some other things. And she's getting back into the riding. She's got 3 young horses now, and she's starting all over again with some young horses.
And yourself these days, are you still riding as much? Are you still competing? Because I heard you got into cycling in a big way.
Yeah. So I'd had such a bad run with horses. I'd lost quite a few horses in a row, and one after the other, and quite traumatically, most of them. And I had no more tears left, basically. I was broken. And I could bounce back, and I bounced back from lots of things. But one day I just said, the universe is telling me this is just not what you're supposed to be doing. And I stopped from one day to the next. I stopped. I lost a very good horse. I'd run out of all money. It's, you know, I just had to take a breather. I had to heal myself. It was no good just trying to carry on and get the next horse and go, get the next horse and go. So, yeah, I stopped, and to get rid of the energy that I had in me, I had to do something else. You know, I had to find a way to hang up my boots without becoming, I needed something to fill that void in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I took up cycling.
So are there no more horses? The yard is empty. You're still teaching though?
I'm still teaching flat out. I'm sort of got a couple of horses to ride, but I don't know if I will ever. Not sure. I said never again, and then a couple of people have tempted me with really beautiful horses. And I think the whole thing is that I mustn't own them because I can't afford them. I can't afford to give them what they need in the care and attention. I mean, the cost of keeping a horse nowadays is astronomical, and to do it well. And I'm not someone to do something in half measures. So, you know, I need my lessons, I need to compete, I need to go to shows, I need the physio and whatever I need for my horse. I need the arena and the going. And I just looked at the budget and said, ain't gonna happen now. I have to see to my retirement. You know,
Do you think it's become unnecessarily expensive, or is it just the way it is? That's just the economy today, and the price of saddles, everything's imported, so everything. I mean, could one do it? Because in my day, I'm still doing it now, but I mean, when we were growing up, things were different. It just did seem cheaper. You could have one saddle for 3 horses, and it just seems to have changed a little bit.
So the difference I've seen in all my years of riding was we were really amateurs. We weren't professional sports people. We, as I say, we were weekend warriors. We mucked around. We loved what we did, but we weren't professionals. And that has changed now. Competition is better. People are riding way better than we ever did in those days. The standards are higher. And to get that, it's attention to detail. You can't ride with a saddle that doesn't fit. You can't bring a thoroughbred off the track and compete at a top level dressage. The standards have improved. The results, the scores have improved. Dressage worldwide, if you look at dressage when I started riding, it's not comparable. It's 20% better in the scores than it was. The winning scores in those days used to be 65% in Europe. And now we're getting into the 90s. And that's because we're doing everything better, which includes the care of the horse, the mental training. Mental training is a huge thing in our sport that has changed. In the good old days, top riders were peaking at 50 years old in dressage. And they went through this process of, as you say, military training, repetition, 10,000 attempts. Now we're learning about the mental behavior of the rider and the horse, and we're getting our top riders are peaking at 25 years old, you know, or 30 years old. So dressage was a sport for old people. Now it's a sport for young people, and we're learning about core strength and mental toughness and how to trigger a horse's instinct, not by 10,000 repetitions, but by seeing into a horse's psyche and getting our timing better. Do we know when we can ask a horse to piaffe now at 7 years old? Well, not by drilling, not by repetition, not, you know, we've come, it's light years ahead of what I remember. is huge. And so it goes with the territory that you're going to have to spend more and do better things to be the best at your game. It's progress.
It's incredibly interesting, but having this, I often hear riders saying, oh, I wish I could have had that horse knowing what I know now. If I knew what I knew now when I had that horse then, it would have been a different. Do you feel the itch with your knowledge now and where we are now to have one last crack at it?
I think as a competitive person, that itch never quite goes away. It's like, giving up smoking. You will always be tempted. And yes, I have been. But no, in the other ways, it really is time for these young, good riders to take over. And I'm not of the one, I think, quit while I'm ahead. I was still winning. I don't want to be out there and do a bad job. And I think my efforts would be more useful training than actually doing it.
Do you get as much satisfaction imparting that knowledge and watching it and watching it develop in somebody else?
Absolutely. Yeah, I do. And it's not to say I couldn't do it. Do I want to go that route? I'm not sure that I would do it to 100%. That's the thing. And if I do it to 100%, it means no more weekends off, long hours, poverty, all the things that go with it. And I'm not sure if I'm really wanting to go there again. But yeah, the itch is always there to ride a good horse. It's a really beautiful thing to do.
Eleanor, how old are you now?
Me, I'm going to be 40 soon.
You better crack on. You better crack on.
Yeah.
Any questions for Karen? Sorry, I've commandeered your interview a little bit. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. This is exactly why I said I'm sure you do a perfectly good job interviewing everybody. Yeah, I just think, Karen, you are an inspiration to many. I think, for the kids that are growing up, it's so important for everybody to know your story. I love these stories. I think it's absolutely amazing where you guys have come from, what you've learned. Like you say, what you went through. You didn't have what we, or even the younger people, I'm getting old now, what they can get their hands on. My niece, she gets jods handed down from my best friend Karen, and it's all like, very expensive clothing, and she only wears like De Niro boots, and I mean, she's 13. I mean, we didn't have that. And you probably had even less. So, the story it's just so interesting how it evolves through the ages and, that. So I'm finding it very interesting. But I think, yeah, your story is amazing. You are an inspiration. You're a fantastic coach. She's also a coach developer, Aiden. So she's not only going to coach riders, but she's going to coach other coaches to be better. And yeah, it's going to be very exciting when we can get up and running and, go forward with all of this. And I'm just so grateful that you are doing the dressage riders too. Thank you, Aiden and Karen. Thank you so much. It was just, I loved your story. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, so it wasn't sort of a very dressage-y story, really. But
perfect, fantastic.
Having a well-trained horse, a beautiful horse to ride. And yeah, it doesn't always have to be about truck and circle.
I want to ask you one last thing before we go, because you obviously had myself being a show jumper, and from that background, Sean was in your yard for a while, Sean Henderson, and you were doing the groundwork on his horses. So I'm going to go back to show jumping. Sorry, dressage riders, but for show jumping horses and the time when you were schooling Sean's horses, what sort of groundwork? Where's the crossover? Because it's so interesting. We've interviewed Oliver Lazarus, and he's big on the dressage training for his jumpers. Then Gonda, we interviewed his flat work is brilliant, but flat work dressage is not flat work jumping. There is a difference. You need to do flat work for jumping. Where is your head at for show jumping horses in terms of flat work and where the crossover is in dressage?
Okay. So I'm going to start with the last question first. I think a lot of dressage horses could do with a lot more jumping-y style flat work. Because we sometimes, what I like about the show jumpers is the sharpness of the horse, the response time, and how sharp we can get them and motivated. Whereas in dressage, sometimes we tend to so busy looking for the perfect technique, we dumb them down a bit. So I think some jumping would really be good for the dressage riders. Coming back to the show jumpers doing dressage, I mean, it's paramount. 80% of your course is on the flat. The horse has an ability to jump or not, you know, but it is critical that you take the right line and that you arrive at the jump in the right balance and straight, which is basically what dressage is about. So it's about building up enough energy and power by engaging the horse and having, I think it's critical that show jumping horses are straight. Otherwise they hang a leg, they lose time in the air, they can't turn. You know, I teach a lot of show jumpers and I love teaching them because they're hungry, they're fearless. I've taught many show jumpers and love the response. In fact, the last good horse I fell off with that really dumped me well and truly was Lisa Williams' horse that she took overseas now.
Campbell.
Yeah, Campbell. I was riding him for her when he first came in, and he managed to dump me well and proper. Probably the last horse I fell off with quite a few years ago. But yeah, I helped Lisa with her Derby horse, and we can make a big difference to their technique. And like Katie's pony was a full halter, and he would always be a little hollow in the base of his neck, so he'd hang his front legs. And if you can get them to lift the base of their neck muscle, it brings the horse's knees up. That's how we teach them passage, coming up through the wither. So if we can do that to a dressage horse, you imagine how much neater we can get them in quicker. We can get them in their front legs for the show jumping. And I think what people like Gonda are saying is don't dumb your horse down.
Yeah, but we're not talking, so we're talking the lateral work, we're talking the strength training, but a Grand Prix show jumper doesn't have to be able to do Grand Prix dressage.
I think, I can't remember the names, I'm really bad with names, but just an interesting, one of the top show jumpers, I wonder if it wasn't Marcus Henning. Anyway, at the Global Dressage Forum, he proceeded to ride a Grand Prix test on his show jumper. And then he said, just to add it, I'll do it with one hand. So yes, there is a place because you're building core strength.
What?
Yeah. You know,
a new challenge at KPC. Yeah. Show jumpers doing dressage tests, Karen.
Yeah, and you would be shocked, Eleanor, how
as long as it goes both ways, and the dressage riders have to then jumper. You're excluded because we know you can do it.
Listen, when I was overseas and we watched the show jumpers warming up, they did spectacular flat work, sitting trot without stirrups.
Okay, I'll take the challenge.
Cool.
Yeah. I mean, Gonda was always big on her flat work. I remember getting lessons with Gonda where you have the stirrups taken away and shoulder ins and really schooling a horse. But it's important how you arrive at the jump. It's really important how do you get from one jump to another. That's critical. And when you're saving, split seconds, it's important that you can turn that horse's shoulder and land in balance and turn and go. You can't do that without schooling.
What sort of exercises would you recommend? So say a horse a little bit heavy in front, needs to lighten up in front, needs to build power, shift its balance from the front end more to the back end. What sort of exercises can we be employing for that?
Well, the one thing I always come back to is stretching, low, deep and round stretching. Really, really important for show jumpers. because they need to work up. They don't need to, you can't come into a fence with your horse's head between its knees. It's not going to work. But the stretching is misunderstood a lot with the show jumping, and it's about getting the horse's wither up. So we really want to get the horse's shoulder and wither up, not their head up. So when they jump, we want them up, and they're going to naturally come up through the adrenaline and so on, and just by the change in the attitude of the rider. But I like to do a lot of stretching and get them really basculing on the ground, and then teaching the show jumpers how to change that weight and take that bow shape that we've got them in and shift it back onto the hind leg. And then the other thing is, as I say, absolute straightness. So
sorry, just getting back to the stretch. So when you're saying they're stretching, are you saying they're stretching in that bow shape, but their nose is down to the ground, but they're still on their hock? Or are you saying stretching as in just getting them as long as possible, and it doesn't matter if their hocks are out the back door a little bit?
So it's, if you think of a bow shape, all right, the top line is stretched, but if you think of the bow, the string at the bottom is, there's tension in it. So that is the undercarriage of the horse. So we're getting them to lift their sternum and lift their stomach muscles and create that bow shape. And then over time, and we're not picking the horse's head up, but we're pushing the horse's hind leg under and bending the joints. So that if you imagine a horse on takeoff, that they can bring their hind leg so under that they can get to the base and really come up. If that's making sense, I don't want to do it with my hands. You keep the horse like this, and you don't pick the horse's head up. You leave the horse like this. You bring the hocks more under until the pole is the highest point, and they come up. But you've come up with a much more powerful hind leg, much more spring in the hind leg. And the other thing that I think show jumpers need a lot of is, often they'll say, I can't see a stride, or I'm missing my stride. And I find that with comparing dressage riders say, I can't count. Of course they can count. When they do the tempi changes, they can count to 4. They learned that, as a 6-year-old, how to count to 4. So it's not about they can't see a stride, and it's not about that they can't count. It's about speed control and balance control. So with show jumpers, you need your horse on the aids, and you need to have many, many gears. And the more gears and fine speed control. So you might see a stride, put your leg on, and the horse delays in the reaction, or take a whoa and the horse resists. You've lost your stride. You've lost your stride because the horse is not on the aid. So you think, I can't see a stride, but meantime the horse hasn't reacted in the moment appropriately. And the same with dressage riders that say they can't count. They can count, but the horses, because of lack of straightness or balance, is slow on the one aid and quick on the other aid. In other words, they'll go across the diagonal and do 3-4, 3-4, 3-4 instead of 4.
And some exercises that we can employ to improve that, to get them quicker off the aid.
I think it's not an exercise. It's about training the horse to listen to your leg. Always a lot of times we're told, put more leg on, use more leg, use more leg. What are you doing? What are you teaching the horse by using more and more leg? And then the leg becomes like a girth. So what you should be saying is train the horse to your lightest aid. So, for example, I would touch my horse with the leg. If it didn't respond, it would get a kick. Then I touch my horse very gently with the leg, like it can feel a fly on its side, but it doesn't know the response. So if it doesn't know the response, it will do nothing or resist. In other words, it will kick out or swish its tail or buck or ignore you. So what I do in my training system, I touch it with the leg and I get the right reaction. I praise it immediately and take the leg off. So pressure, lack of pressure. So a biggest reward for a horse is lack of pressure. Take the pressure off. That's a reward. That's better than carrots. And you have to have that training system, that attention. I'm going to touch you, and this is what I want, and consistently. And then you do it every day the same. black is black, white is white, and then they understand the aid. They don't resist naturally, they just don't know the answer. So as a rider, you've got to get that across. So you might be teaching them a turn on the forehand, but it's knowing the response you want. This is the response I want. And then going on teaching people that you can't stop a horse with the reins is a big one. That's not the braking system of the horse. The braking system comes from shifting the balance back. So it comes from your body weight. I mean, very simply, if you want to go faster, go more forward. When you want to slow down, come more back with your body weight. Not how hard you pull the reins or how much you give the reins. That is not your speed control. You might have some degree of control, but it's not efficient, because if the horse is hollow and stiff and fighting you, it will come back with the hocks out the back. Then it's got no push to take off over a fence. Does that make sense? So
it's like if you equate it to a car, the reins pulling back is really the handbrake. It's the last resort.
Yes, exactly. So I always talk to my pupils about coming into a stop street using your gears. That's how. So you want to build the energy because you want to go again. Whenever you whoa, there always has to be a go in it. So if you whoa by switching off the ignition or pulling on the handbrake, if you have to go again, you're in a problem. There's a problem to get going again. So you always have to whoa with a go in mind.
Yeah. Lots we can chat about, but I fear we have run out of time. Thank you, Karen, so much for joining us. I really, really do appreciate it. We're very, very glad you're still, even though you're not going to throw your leg over too much anymore of the horses, you still have a hand in coaching, and the knowledge is still there to impart on others. So thank you very, very much.
No, it's a pleasure. Thank you, Aidan.
And to you, Eleanor, I'm sorry I stole your interview somewhat. I need to learn to keep quiet.
No, it's all good, Aidan. I think everybody enjoys hearing it with you as well. You are the man of the show. And yeah, I voted for your skipping challenge. You were very good. So please, everybody go vote for Aidan.
Yes. And I meant to say, thank you for voting. I meant to say, Karen, while we were on the topic of the lipid zonas, anybody out there who is in a position to donate to the lipid zonas, they are desperate for funds, I do believe. So if you can lend a helping hand or just phone them up and see what exactly they do need. Everybody, thank you so much for your time. We'll see you next time. Thanks, ladies.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karen.